Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about something I see out there oftentimes in the evidence-based training world, and it's something I want to dispute while still acknowledging that their motives are good in saying this. Let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. All right. I saw this a lot lately. In fact, I saw this over on a discussion that Dr. Brad Schoenfeld, Dr. Gaines, was involved in, and it's just one of those things that miffs me from the perspective of someone who does promote that everyone needs to build a really big strength base. Like, I don't consider it optional to when I say that for most of you out there as healthy men, your goal should be to get to a 200 press, a 300 bench, a 400 squat, a 500 deadlift. That, to me, that's baseline strength, and that anyone who is willing to commit 2 hours of their life to training every day for a number of years, that's totally obtainable, reasonable goals on a properly structured program. And I'm talking about 45 minutes of training 3 days a week. You should be able to reach those goals eventually. That's normal. That's not what I would call a strength specialization. That's not serious lifters. That's recreational numbers. I think that every healthy man out there should be able to eventually reach those, with a few exceptions. The caveat being there are people who won't. But if you don't, then you're just not following a good training program. That's reality. And I think those are perfectly normal to reach for people with average genetics on good training. And what that's going to equal is a lot of muscle mass. They'll always say things, well, muscle doesn't burn that many calories. It's like when we look at the studies, we don't like to see weightlifting promoted as a primary mechanism of fat loss. And I understand what they mean for the starting novice, because let's be realistic here. The average person who joins a gym who is morbidly obese and they want to get into shape, strength training should be part of what they do. But the fact of the matter is they don't have enough muscle, and they're not going to gain enough muscle in their first 6 months to impact their metabolic rate an enormous amount. They're not going to build enough work capacity on free weight exercises to change their energy turnover so much that it's going to cure their obesity. And I think that's the direction they want to go there, is explaining that to people that if you're using weight training as a primary mechanism of fat loss, instead of controlling your diet, you're still going to be morbidly obese a year from now. In other words, if you need to lose 50 pounds of body fat to be in the healthy range, and that's what you start doing, and you don't scale your food way back, you don't make enormous changes to your diet, a year from now, you're still going to be 45 pounds overweight, right? That's what's going to happen. And we do see the exceptions. I've seen people who do start weight training it seriously, who start losing body weight without really changing their diet due to the large change, but they're oftentimes training really hard, way harder than the average person is going to train on a very structured program. So that's kind of the exception to the rule, not the norm. But this idea that people who train hard and lift don't have enormously different maintenance needs, that's not true though. I've observed it my entire training life. And you take even me, for example. Let's be realistic here. When I'm doing no cardio, when I am doing no cardio and I am purely lifting several days a week with moderate volume, my work capacity and my strength levels are high enough that my maintenance calories are close to 4,000. In other words, I can maintain my body weight without gaining on something like 3,800 calories a day. That's my maintenance. I know people who weigh less than me who have even higher maintenances. I've known people, because they do track their stuff religiously, who lift and train hard, who have maintenance calories of 4,000, 4,500, who aren't even doing a bunch of cardio. All right, and people need to understand that. I've watched over the years novice lifters change their energy turnover by 1,000 calories a day in less than a year. Their maintenance calories go up, and you see it in particularly healthy young men when they start bulking. There are guys who are able to gain at 2,500 calories when they start. And by the end of the year, in order for them to gain even a pound every 2 weeks, they're eating 3,600 calories. And that is what's required of them, because what ends up happening, and people need to understand, as you start gaining strength and muscle, it's not just the epoch effect and everything else. It's just your total energy turnover and work capacity go up so tremendously that you do burn a lot more calories. And I think when people look at this data on it, they say, well, a weight training session only burns this much and the post-workout is only this much. But what are the strength levels you're looking at? Those are people who are on really bad training programs. Those are people on really bad training programs. Those are people who aren't gaining much muscle, or again, they're not gaining much muscle in the big body parts, right? It might be someone who does a little bit of leg work. Maybe they do some leg presses once a week, chest and curl bros. But when you take people who are doing very serious full body training, you have someone who is squatting with linear progression 3 days a week. They're deadlifting at least once a week. They're doing rows and pull-ups and stuff 2-3 times a week. In other words, you have someone who is putting in an enormous amount of work on the big barbell exercises that work the legs, the back, and they are adding poundages every single week, and they're training with a pretty significant amount of volume. Again, when you're squatting 3 days a week, and you've put 50 pounds, 60 pounds, 100 pounds onto your squat of what you're squatting on a daily basis, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, your energy turnover starts to go up tremendously. And I think when people look at this data and say, well, you know, we've got this data showing that epoch is only this and the energy turnover only changes a couple hundred calories, what sort of training are they doing? And that's what people need to understand with the evidence-based stuff. You don't have a lot of evidence of taking people who are ranked novices in the gym and putting them on a true linear progression, high frequency squatting and deadlifting based program that obviously has upper body stuff too, but stuff that moves the big muscles. And I don't mean doing leg presses. I'm sorry, Dr. Bro. I like Dr. Brad, but I mean a lot of that shit. You know, it's like get guys under a barbell. Okay, you got to stop this nonsense. I know you like to sell your books, but seriously, put people on a 3-day-a-week squatting program and monitor their changes over the course of a year, right? You take a novice male who can only squat 95 pounds for 5 reps and you put him on a proper training program and you have it to where he can squat 275, 280 pounds for 5 sets of 5 a year later, and then go check his energy turnover, check his caloric needs, find out what his TDEE is from day one versus that point, and then come back and tell me it hasn't changed by 1,000 calories a day. It will. It will. And these people, when they say this, well, weightlifting doesn't do that much, you're probably not hanging around circles of people who are really strong, who really have a high work capacity on the big lifts. I'm not talking about a leg press. I'm talking about squatting, deadlifting, rows, clean, standing presses, these big movements. People who have a tremendous strength base. I mean, if you start hanging around people who squat 450 plus for a max on a regular basis and you start looking at what their energy needs are, people who maintain a strength level of, I don't know, 450 squat or higher, anything in that range in my experience, people who are at that strength level or higher, especially guys who squat over 500, guys who squat 600, even if they're closer to 200 pounds body weight, their energy needs and their energy turnover is usually enormous. It's usually enormous. These aren't guys with 3,000 calorie maintenance calories. If they are, they are very, very rare in my experience. You start getting to this and it's very, very common to find people who have a 4,000 plus maintenance calories, even if they're doing minimal conditioning work. So I think the point that they want to make is that for the person starting out, you're not going to lose 50 pounds of fat just by weightlifting, right? The point is that it's going to be very small your first 6 months. You're going to have to put in usually years of work to see a massive change. What we're thinking of is these really high energy turnovers due to muscle and work capacity and epoch from all your training, right? That it's a long-term investment. So I think what they really are trying to bring home to people is that in the short term, if you're obese, your diet is going to be the primary mechanism by which you lose body fat. It is. It's going to be the primary mechanism. It's going to be the single most important factor with your training being a secondary. So they want to de-emphasize that to some point, but I think that they also do need to acknowledge it in the long term that yes, someone who really and truly trains hard, and I don't mean some silly ass bro split with cables and machines, I mean someone who really trains hard for 3 or 4 or 5 years on a well-written program to where you do build an enormous strength base and an enormous amount of work capacity, your energy needs are going to be tremendously higher. Tremendously higher. It's not just going to be an extra 500 or 1,000 calories, right? Your maintenance calories are very possibly going to go up by 1,500, 2,000. In other words, your maintenance calories could basically double for some people. It could double in that time frame. And that's just what I've observed consistently with athletes who do train hard, people who do train hard. And quite frankly, it's possible to obtain a pretty significant fraction of that for people who aren't even strength specialists, who are just on good training programming 3 days a week. Right? A good full body program with barbell exercises and weighted body weight movements 3 days a week can actually probably get most healthy men, hell, even middle-aged men, can get their maintenance calories above 3,000. Very, very doable. And women, the same thing. You see women with 2,500 plus who get on proper training programs and who are even at good body weights. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative. I will talk to you guys next time.